What if everything you've ever believed about the world around you, about your body, your thoughts, your memories, was based on a grand illusion? What if the walls, the sky, the floor beneath your feet, all of it was nothing more than a rendering, a stream of information interpreted by something far deeper than your senses, something that science can't measure, but something you've always been? Because here's the truth that cracks the very foundation of what you think is real. You are not a body. You are not even your mind. You are awareness, experiencing a simulation so immersive, so convincingly designed that you forgot it was a simulation at all. Now, I know how wild that might sound. But stay with me, because if you've ever felt that subtle discomfort, like something about reality just doesn't add up, you're not crazy. You're waking up. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever had a dream so vivid that just for a while you were completely convinced it was real? You laughed, cried, ran, fell in love, and then you woke up and realized none of it was happening in the physical world. But here's the kicker. While it was happening, it felt real. Every emotion, every detail. Now imagine this. What if waking life is just a higher resolution dream, a longer, more consistent simulation that your consciousness logs into? What if this physical world you trust so deeply, this real world, isn't as physical as you think? You see, for centuries we've been taught that the brain is the source of consciousness, that when the body dies, you, whatever you is, fade into nothing. End of story. But there's a growing wave of evidence, both spiritual and scientific, that says otherwise, and it starts with one simple, mind-shattering idea. Consciousness doesn't come from the brain. The brain doesn't generate awareness, it filters it. Like a radio receiving a signal, your brain is just the tuning device. The signal itself, you, exists outside the machine. Modern science is only beginning to catch up with what ancient mystics, philosophers, and now renegade physicists have been saying for millennia. Consciousness is primary. It's not a byproduct of neurons firing, it's the foundational field from which all matter, energy, and experience arises. Let that sink in. The world you see around you isn't real in the way you think it is. It's not solid, it's not absolute, it's information, data. A flowing stream of probabilities that become real only when observed, only when consciousness interacts with it. This is not science fiction, this is quantum physics. Particles don't exist in definite states until they're measured. Electrons behave like waves until someone watches them and then suddenly they become particles. Reality itself waits to be observed. Which raises a question far more important than anything you've been taught in school. If consciousness creates reality, if observation makes things real, then who or what are you? The answer isn't a brain. The answer isn't a body. The answer is something far more mysterious and far more eternal. What you are is the observer, not the character in the story, but the awareness of the story, not the avatar in the game, but the player holding the controller. And once you see that, once you even begin to entertain it, everything starts to unravel, in the best way. You start noticing the cracks in the illusion, how the world seems to respond to your inner state, how thoughts seem to ripple outward and shape your circumstances, how time bends during moments of deep flow or trauma, how synchronicities line up too perfectly to be coincidence. These aren't accidents, they're reminders from the system itself that this reality is malleable, that it's not solid, that you're in something far more complex and meaningful than just a random universe of lifeless matter. And here's where things get even more uncomfortable, yet liberating. If reality is a simulation, if your consciousness is not local to your body, then what happens when your body dies? The answer isn't disappearance, it's transition. Death, as we've been taught to fear it, loses its power the moment you realize this isn't the before life. This isn't the place you start and then leave. This could very well be the afterlife. The continuation, a realm inside a larger system where your consciousness enters, evolves, and eventually logs out. You might be in it right now. living inside one layer of a much bigger reality, playing a game of forgetfulness, growth, and awakening. And that realization, it changes everything. You start seeing death not as an end, but as a change of scenery, a loading screen, a shift in vibration that takes you from this layer of experience to another. You stop asking, what happens after we die, and start asking, what am I doing with this moment, knowing I'm already inside something eternal? Because if death doesn't end consciousness, then we have to ask the real question, what are we living inside of? A training ground? A soul classroom? A cosmic simulation designed to mirror your thoughts, fears and desires back to you until you finally wake up? And if that's true, then nothing is random. Not your birth, not your pain, not your questions, not the fact that you're listening to this right now. Somewhere, deep inside you, you've always known this. It's why you've questioned everything. It's why you've felt out of place, like the rules of this world didn't quite make sense. It's why you've sensed that something much deeper is going on behind the curtain of everyday life, because there is. And once you remember who you are, not a name, not a title, not a job, but pure, indestructible awareness, you begin to navigate this reality differently. You stop reacting and start observing. You stop fearing death and start embracing mystery. You stop chasing external meaning and start listening to the deeper whisper within you, the one that says, you're not from here, but you're here for a reason. This is the invitation to remember, to question, to awaken, and most of all, to realize that what you are cannot die, because what you are has never been born. You're the awareness behind the dream, the light behind the eyes, the player in a cosmic simulation designed not to trap you but to free you. So the question is no longer, is this real? The question is, what will you do now that you know it isn't? Because once you begin to see the illusion, you gain something extraordinary. The power to shape it. And in the chapters ahead, we're going to dive deeper into the science, into the stories, into the testimonies of physicists who crossed the veil and came back with the map. But for now, let it settle in. Let the illusion ripple. Let the boundaries you've clung to begin to blur. Because the moment you question reality, reality begins to reveal its secrets. And it starts with the most forbidden truth of all. You were never just human. You were always consciousness, and that changes everything. Look at your hands for a moment. Wiggle your fingers. Feel the pressure of the air against your skin, the gravity pulling you downward, the sound in your ears, the thoughts running through your head. All of that feels so immediate, so real, so convincing. But what if I told you that everything you're sensing right now is being rendered not by the world outside of you, but by the system behind your consciousness? What if your body isn't the real you but an avatar, a temporary suit you're wearing in a highly sophisticated simulation? This isn't fantasy, this isn't science fiction, this is a growing theory backed by physicists, consciousness explorers and mystics alike, that your body, your senses, and even your identity are part of a virtual construct, a rendered environment that exists not because it's physical, but because it's being computed by something beyond this layer of experience. And just like a video game character doesn't know its pixels on a screen, most people go through life completely convinced that this skin and bone identity is all they are. But you're beginning to question. You're starting to sense the glitch. Let's step back. Imagine you're in a dream. Not just any dream, but one so vivid that you feel every touch, hear every sound, see every face in perfect detail. In that dream you may believe you're in danger, you may laugh, you may cry, you may even fall in love. But then you wake up. The entire world dissolves in an instant and you realize that everything you just experienced, your body, your surroundings, even your sense of self, was part of a temporary simulation constructed by your mind. Now ask yourself, how do you know that hasn't happened again? What if waking life is just another dream, one with stable rules and consistent feedback loops, but still a simulation nonetheless? One where your consciousness logs in, uses a body as a vehicle, navigates this environment, collects experience, and then eventually logs out? This is not a metaphor. It's a real possibility, and it's one that more and more quantum theorists, like Thomas Campbell, are beginning to take seriously. Your body is not who you are, it's an instrument, a controlled interface. Like a pilot operating through a cockpit, your consciousness is maneuvering this avatar, seeing through its eyes, feeling through its nervous system, interpreting its input, but not being contained by it. And if that's true, then death isn't an ending, it's a logout. You see, every simulation has boundaries, and one of the most powerful illusions in this one is the idea of mortality, the ticking clock, the aging body, the fear of the final breath. But if your avatar is just a tool, and your consciousness isn't inside your skull but operating through it, then when the avatar breaks down, you don't end, you transition. You shift into a new interface, a new reality frame, and that's where it gets truly fascinating, because when you start to understand reality as a simulation, you begin to see parallels everywhere. Have you ever noticed how dreams and waking life both seem to operate on symbols? In dreams, you experience surreal scenes that somehow reflect your emotions, your traumas, your hopes. In waking life, the symbolism becomes more subtle, but it's still there. People appear at the perfect moment to teach you something. Events repeat themselves until you learn the lesson. Emotions show up in your body like warnings from a deeper code. In a dream, the world is generated in real time based on your state of mind. If you're anxious, the dream becomes dark. If you're joyful, it becomes light. Now look at your waking life. Do you notice the same thing happening? Do you see how your internal state seems to influence the external world? It's not just coincidence. It's the mechanism of the simulation. When you're angry, you attract more things to be angry about. When you're grateful, beauty seems to multiply around you. This isn't magic, it's design. The simulation responds to the quality of your consciousness because the purpose of the simulation is not survival, it's evolution. Just like in a video game. You don't play to sit still, you play to grow, to level up, to face challenges and choose how you respond. And just like in a game, death is not the end, it's just a transition to another level, another phase, another map. What if every time you died in this simulation you simply reloaded into a new experience? A new body? A new set of parameters designed specifically for the next phase of your soul's expansion? And if that's true, if you are already playing inside a layered reality that spans more than just one lifetime, then everything changes. You no longer fear death. You no longer attach to your appearance, your status, your temporary storyline. You begin to realize that this body, this personality, this identity is a costume, one you chose, one that was tailored to teach you exactly what your soul came here to learn. Think about that. What if your body wasn't randomly assigned but carefully selected? What if every limitation, every strength, every relationship in your life is part of the simulation's architecture, guiding you, nudging you, pushed toward a specific kind of growth? Maybe your anxiety is the very thing you came here to transcend. Maybe your illness is the portal to discovering your power. Maybe your heartbreak is the fire that forges your compassion. And when the mission is complete, you'll exit this simulation and return to the larger system that's been running it all along. Not to disappear, but to integrate what you've experienced, to reflect, to choose your next simulation with greater clarity and purpose. Death, then, is not darkness, it's a doorway, and the fear we carry around it is part of the design, because fear makes the game feel real. Just like in a horror film or an intense dream, fear pulls you into the moment. It makes your choices matter. But the fear isn't the truth. It's the interface, the code, the illusion that helps you grow through it. And if you've ever had a near-death experience, a profound meditation, or even a dream where you felt yourself leave the body, then you've already glimpsed the next layer of the simulation. You've already tasted what it's like when the avatar falls away and only awareness remains. No fear, no time, just presence, just consciousness, and that's where you began, and that's where you return. But here's the most important part. You didn't come here by accident. You chose to enter this simulation. You chose the challenge. You chose to forget, so that remembering would mean something. So now, as the illusion begins to unravel, as the simulation reveals its code, you get to choose again. You can continue to play the game of fear, of separation, of control, or you can remember that you are the player, not the avatar. That you are the consciousness, not the character. And when you start to live like that, something magical happens. The simulation responds. The walls bend, the glitches increase, the truth accelerates. And one day, when the avatar finally powers down, you won't be afraid. You'll smile. You'll watch the simulation fade. And you'll realize you were never inside the system. The system was inside you, and it always has been. In a world dominated by cold equations and the rigid frameworks of classical science, it's rare, almost unthinkable, for a credentialed physicist to step beyond the veil and admit there's more to reality than particles, waves, and the observable universe. Rarer still is the one who doesn't just speculate, but ventures into that unknown, who lives it, studies it, and then builds an entire scientific model around what he's seen. That man is Thomas Campbell. You may not have heard his name in mainstream headlines, but in the corners of scientific inquiry where consciousness, physics, and metaphysics converge, Campbell is a revolutionary. A physicist, a mathematician, and a systems engineer who worked on classified defense projects, NASA simulations, and advanced research into missile defense. Campbell comes from the very heart of the scientific establishment. He speaks the language of data, of modeling, of quantifiable systems, and yet his life took a turn that no scientific textbook could have prepared him for. It was the 1970s. At the time, Campbell had no interest in the esoteric or spiritual. He wasn't trying to escape reality. He was trying to understand it, logical, analytical, grounded. But that pursuit of understanding led him somewhere unexpected. A research lab focused not on the mechanics of rockets or radar, but on the mystery of consciousness itself. It was here that Thomas Campbell met Robert Monroe, the founder of the Monroe Institute and one of the earliest pioneers of out-of-body exploration. Monroe had begun to document and systematize something that most of the world still dismissed as fantasy: the ability to leave the physical body and travel through other states of consciousness. He wasn't a guru. He wasn't a psychic. He was a businessman turned explorer who stumbled into these altered states unintentionally, and then, methodically, began to map them. Campbell, intrigued and skeptical, joined Monroe's research group not as a follower, but as a physicist. His role? To build computer models that could track, replicate, and explain the results of consciousness experiments. To apply the scientific method to a domain that, at the time, was ridiculed by mainstream academia. He came for the data. But what he found changed everything. You see, it didn't take long for Campbell to go from observer to participant, to move from building the models to experiencing the phenomena himself. At first it was subtle, unexplained mental impressions, flashes of imagery, the sense of detachment from the body. But then, over time, something undeniable began to happen. He left his body, not metaphorically, not in a dream, but in a conscious, waking state, with full awareness, full memory, and full control, again and again, and each time he brought something back. Not just wonder or insight, but a deeper understanding of the systems behind these altered realities. These weren't hallucinations. These weren't vague, mystical dreams. They were coherent, structured, and governed by their own internal laws. They were functional. Campbell began to treat these experiences the way a physicist treats experiments in a lab: repeatable, observable, testable. He developed protocols, documented variables, and compared results, and over time a picture began to emerge. A model theory. Not just a theory of out-of-body travel, not just a theory of mind, but a theory of everything. He called it My Big Toe, a tongue-in-cheek acronym for My Big Theory of Everything. And while the title might sound playful, the work is anything but. It's one of the most ambitious attempts ever made to unify physics, metaphysics, consciousness, and the very nature of reality itself under a single framework. Campbell's conclusion: reality is not physical, it's virtual. In his words, we are not physical beings who occasionally have spiritual experiences. We are consciousness, non-physical entities, experiencing a simulated environment rendered for us by a larger system of intelligence. The body is an avatar, the brain is a processor, the world is an interface. And death. Death is simply logging out of one reality frame and re-entering another. Now, pause and think about that. This isn't coming from a mystic in a robe or a YouTube spiritualist with a crystal on their forehead. This is coming from a man trained in mathematics, physics, and military-grade systems modeling. A man who spent years working on projects for NASA and the Department of Defense. A man whose entire worldview was built on hard science. And who still arrived at the conclusion that consciousness is primary and the physical universe is secondary. Imagine what that must have been like. To be trained your whole life to believe that matter is king, that what can't be measured doesn't exist, that anything beyond the five senses is just speculation or delusion, and then to find yourself floating outside your body, watching your physical form from above, traveling through environments more vivid and stable than waking life, communicating with intelligences beyond anything you were taught was real. Campbell didn't run from this, he leaned in. He studied these states the way Einstein studied relativity, with curiosity, with rigor, with endless testing, and he began to realize that the same rules of logic, probability, and information theory that governed computer systems and physical models could also explain the structures of these non-physical realms. Everything is data. Everything is information. Everything is rendered in real time by a system that responds to the quality of the observer's consciousness. This was the revelation, and the implications are staggering. If this physical world is not the base reality, but just one of many rendered environments within a vast system of consciousness, then it means that what we call life and what we call death are just transitions between levels, different stages of the simulation. Different classrooms in the same school. You don't end when your body dies, you shift. You wake up in the next layer, or return to the source consciousness, or prepare for the next mission, the next simulation, the next adventure. And perhaps even more importantly, it means that what you do now, how you live, how you grow, how you evolve your consciousness actually matters far more than you think. Because the purpose of this simulation is not survival, it's evolution. Not evolution of the species, but evolution of the self, the soul, the node of consciousness that you are, refining itself through experience, choice, and learning. And Campbell's model doesn't just suggest this, it provides a detailed structure for how and why it works. He maps out reality frames, feedback loops, entropy reduction, and the role of love as the highest form of evolved consciousness. In his view, the universe isn't a cold, empty accident, it's a learning lab, a beautifully designed system with one mission, to help consciousness grow. And you're in it. Fine. Watching this, processing this, may be resisting it, may be feeling like something deep inside you already knows it. And here's the wild part. Thomas Campbell didn't ask for any of this. He didn't go searching for mysticism or enlightenment. He followed the data. He followed the questions. He followed his own curiosity down a rabbit hole that most scientists are too afraid to even acknowledge. But he went. And he came back with a map. And that map is now in your hands. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Because once you understand that your body is just a vehicle, that your identity is just a temporary role, that your reality is just one version of a much larger system, You can't go back. You can't unknow what you now know. You can't pretend this is all there is. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what your consciousness needed to remember right now. That this isn't the beginning, it's not the end. It's a simulation, a lesson, a game, a gift. And the one who's playing is you. The real you, not the character. The consciousness behind it. And just like Thomas Campbell, once you begin to explore that truth, not just believe it but live it, your entire reality starts to shift because you're not just in the simulation anymore. You're waking up within it, and that changes everything. There's a place nestled in the quiet hills of Virginia that from the outside looks unassuming, just a cluster of buildings surrounded by trees, far from the noise of the cities and the scrutiny of conventional institutions. But inside, something remarkable has been happening for decades. Inside, people aren't just studying the mind, they're leaving the body. They're mapping the edges of reality, and sometimes crossing right through it. This place is called the Monroe Institute, and what happens there has the power to shatter your understanding of what consciousness truly is. Founded by Robert Monroe, a media executive turned consciousness explorer, the Monroe Institute was never about belief systems or spiritual dogma. It was built on one question: what is happening when we leave the body? Not figuratively, not in metaphor, but literally. When consciousness detaches, when people report floating above their physical form, traveling through unknown dimensions, speaking to entities and returning with knowledge they couldn't have acquired otherwise. Monroe himself didn't set out to become a mystic. In fact, it all began as an experiment in sound. He was researching the effects of audio frequencies on learning and sleep when, suddenly, something strange began happening. He found himself drifting out of his body. At first, he thought it was a hallucination, a glitch, maybe stress or sleep disorder. But it kept happening, repeatedly, vividly, and always with that same unmistakable feeling that he was fully awake, fully conscious, and yet no longer confined to his body. So he did what few have the courage to do. He didn't run from the experience, he leaned into it. He documented it, he studied it, and eventually he created a system to help others experience the same thing. That system became known as hemispheric synchronization, or simply hemisync, a series of binaural beat technologies designed to synchronize the left and right hemispheres of the brain. When you listen to slightly different frequencies in each ear, the brain begins to respond by generating a third frequency, the difference between the two leading the listener into altered states of awareness. Now, this isn't just music or relaxing ambient noise, it's science. Pure frequency, carefully calibrated. These tones guide your brainwaves into specific states. Deep meditation, lucid dreaming, heightened focus, or even the so-called mind-awake body experience state that precedes an out-of-body experience. And what makes this even more compelling is that it's repeatable, it's testable. It's not based on talent or belief, it's based on training. At the Monroe Institute, you don't just talk about altered states, you enter them. You explore them with discipline, intention, and scientific precision. Participants undergo structured programs in specially designed check units, controlled holistic environmental chambers. These are isolated booths where you lie down, put on headphones, and let the frequencies do their work. Within minutes, your body begins to relax, your thoughts slow, and then something else begins to happen. You begin to shift, to separate, to expand beyond the boundaries of your skin. For many, the first experience is subtle, a sensation of floating, a gentle vibration, the feeling that your body is still there but you are somewhere else. For others, it's immediate and undeniable. They find themselves hovering near the ceiling, moving through walls, traveling to landscapes that defy physical description, and no matter how far they go, they always come back changed, because once you leave the body, even once, the illusion of physicality is never quite the same. But Monroe wasn't content with personal anecdotes. He wanted to understand the mechanics. So he gathered a team: scientists, psychologists, physicists, people like Thomas Campbell, who brought analytical rigor to the table. Together they began to map these experiences, catalog the stages, identify repeatable patterns. They found that the out-of-body state wasn't random. It followed structure. Participants would pass through consistent phases: vibrational states, detachment, movement, and entry into non-physical environments that were startlingly detailed, intelligent, and stable. And what they discovered there pointed to a reality that stretches far beyond what we've been told. People reported visiting deceased loved ones, meeting guides, entering vast teaching spaces. Some described being taken to life review chambers, where their experiences were replayed with astonishing clarity, not as punishment, but as growth. Others found themselves in realms of pure light, or cities made of thought, or black voids of infinite peace. These weren't dreams, they weren't hallucinations. The consistency across different participants, people of all backgrounds, beliefs, and ages, suggested something profound. These non-physical realities weren't being imagined, they were being accessed. And more importantly, they pointed to something that shakes the foundations of materialist science. Death is not what we think it is. Because in these sessions, people began exploring what felt like the death state from the inside. They weren't flatlining, they weren't dying, but they were entering a realm that matched the descriptions of near-death experiences from around the world. The tunnel, the presence, the light, the review, the overwhelming feeling of going home. It's as if death is not a wall but a veil, a soft membrane between two frequencies of reality, and the Monroe Institute developed tools to push gently through that veil before the body ever dies. So what does this mean for you? It means that the end you've been taught to fear might not be an end at all. It might be a shift, a gentle phase transition into another layer of the simulation. And if that's true, then life itself becomes something much more dynamic, much more layered, much more eternal. Monroe, death isn't studied through corpses or funerals. It's studied through experience. You go in and you come back, not just with stories, but with transformation. A different relationship to the self, a different relationship to fear, a different understanding of what it means to be alive. Because here's the truth. When you realize that consciousness can exist outside the body, can function, perceive, learn, and grow in dimensions that don't require flesh or bone, something inside you shifts. You stop identifying with the vehicle and start identifying with the driver. You stop clinging to the illusion of physical permanence and begin embracing the mystery of non-physical evolution. And it doesn't require belief. It requires curiosity, discipline, a willingness to step beyond the edge of what you've been taught is possible. That's what the Monroe Institute offers. Not answers, but access. Access to the deeper layers of the simulation. Access to the operating system behind the screen. Access to the you that exists beyond birth and death. So many people go through life terrified of what comes next, terrified of the unknown. But what if you could explore the unknown? What if you could train yourself right now to enter that space consciously, to become familiar with it, comfortable in it? What if you could die before you die and come back with clarity, courage, and peace? That's not just a poetic idea. That's the mission behind the Monroe Institute, to demystify death, to normalize expanded states, to treat the soul like a frontier of research, not superstition. And if you've ever had a moment of stillness where the boundaries of your body seem to dissolve, if you've ever felt the presence of something greater while meditating, dreaming, or simply sitting in silence, if you've ever known deep in your bones that there's more than this physical world, then you're already halfway there. The rest is practice. The rest is remembering. The rest is exploring not with fear, but with fascination. Because the truth isn't hiding behind the stars. It's not buried in books. It's not waiting until you die. It's within you now. And the tools to access it are already here. Your breath, your intention, your awareness, and yes, even sound. A simple frequency can open the doorway, and once you walk through it, you'll never see death the same way again, because you'll realize it's not something to fear, it's something to understand. And when you do, you don't just become less afraid to die, you become truly ready to live. In the beginning, Thomas Campbell approached the mysteries of consciousness with the detachment of a scientist. He was a systems analyst, a physicist trained to model reality through numbers, logic, and clean variables. His job wasn't to believe, it was to observe, to measure, and to replicate. But what he encountered at the Monroe Institute could not be captured in a spreadsheet or confined to a single lab report. The deeper he went into those altered states, the less he could remain an outside observer. Something within him had to shift. And it did. He crossed a threshold, not just into the non-physical worlds, but into a deeper layer of his own purpose. What began as passive study evolved into full immersion. He was no longer just programming computers or tracking neural activity. He was traveling beyond the body, beyond the five senses, beyond the rules of the physical world. And what he found there changed not only how he saw consciousness, but how he saw everything. One of the first things Campbell discovered during these explorations was that these non-physical experiences were not vague, foggy, or chaotic. They were structured, coherent, governed by their own laws, just like the physical world. But unlike this physical simulation, the non-physical environments weren't constrained by material limitations. They were responsive, adaptive, and, in many cases, intelligently interactive. He would enter what he called reality frames, distinct environments that functioned with stability, rules, and feedback. These weren't random dreamscapes or unconscious hallucinations. They were layered levels of reality, rendered by something greater, sustained by a system of order that suggested profound intentionality. In some of these frames, he encountered what could only be described as guidance. Entities, intelligences, or systems, whatever you want to call them, that seemed to know far more than he did, yet met him without judgment. They weren't interested in control or conversion. They were here to assist, to teach, to help him evolve through direct experience. And this was one of his most shocking discoveries, that the system itself, the larger consciousness system that underlies all reality, is not random. It's not chaotic. It's loving, compassionate, and deeply invested in the evolution of each individual node of consciousness, each soul, each spark of awareness that logs into the simulation of physical life. Campbell realized that he, like everyone else, wasn't just a passenger in this existence. He was a participant in a much larger process. A game, yes, but one with stakes, one with purpose, one designed not to entertain, but to elevate. In these altered states, he learned how to move through environments at will. He could shift focus, travel to what felt like distant realms, interact with intelligences, and even access information from other parts of the system. And each time, he would return to his physical body not just with memories, but with transformation, with perspective, with a growing sense of responsibility, not to control the simulation, but to engage with it more consciously. They began to understand that consciousness isn't locked inside the skull. It doesn't originate from the brain. It's non-local, it's fundamental. The brain, the body, the world, these are all interfaces. They're not the source, they're not the player. They're the hardware through which the player, you, experiences this reality frame. And that's when the big question began to rise in his mind. One that changes the very foundation of how we think about life and death. What if death is not an end, but a portal into the deeper simulation? What if what we call the afterlife isn't something separate from this world, but the next layer, the next level in a nested hierarchy of simulated environments? What if, when the body shuts down, the player doesn't die, but simply logs out of one reality and wakes up in another? This isn't just an idea for Campbell. It's something he experienced again and again in his journeys beyond the body. He would reach spaces that clearly weren't part of the physical simulation, yet held their own internal structure. He found waiting areas, transition zones, review chambers, places of rest, learning, and reorientation. He found that when consciousness exits the physical frame, it doesn't dissolve into a void. It enters a continuation hyper, one that feels astonishingly more real than this world ever did. In some states, he would observe what he later described as the soul's debriefing, a kind of post-game review where the individual's life was processed not by an external judge, but by the individual's own consciousness, seen from a higher perspective. Everything that was done, felt, chosen, ignored, it all came into focus, but not with punishment, with learning, with love. And what's more, this process wasn't unique to him. Across cultures, near-death accounts, spiritual traditions, and mystical experiences, similar descriptions began to echo the same themes: a tunnel, a light, a presence, a reunion, a remembering, as though consciousness had never truly left the source, but had only immersed itself in the avatar so deeply that it forgot its true nature. Campbell's explorations confirmed that these realms aren't metaphorical. They are experiential realities that respond to your level of awareness, your vibrational state, and your intention. And they're accessible not just after death, but now, through disciplined expansion of consciousness. That alone reframes everything. It means that death isn't waiting for you. It's available to you here now, if you're ready to explore, if you're ready to remember, if you're willing to let go of the fear that was programmed into you from birth. Because the fear of death is one of the most deeply rooted illusions of the simulation. It's the ultimate tool to keep you identified with the avatar, to keep you playing small, afraid, and attached to things that are impermanent. But once you step outside the body, even once you realize you're still you without it, that fear begins to lose its grip, and in its place, something extraordinary emerges. Freedom. Freedom to live without the fear of endings. Freedom to engage with this world from a place of curiosity, not anxiety. Freedom to ask the deeper questions, because you no longer need to be afraid of the answers. This shift, from passive participant to direct explorer, is not just something reserved for physicists in labs or monks in caves. It's something you can begin too, not by leaving your job or renouncing the world, but by turning inward, by exploring your own consciousness, by using the tools that exist now, meditation, intention, sound technology, to crack open the illusion and step through. Because here's the secret. The code isn't just out there, it's inside you. You carry the doorway to the deeper simulation within your awareness, and when you close your eyes, quiet the noise, and begin to listen, not with your ears but with your presence, you'll start to feel it, the subtle shift, the soft pull of the non-physical, the recognition that this world is only one chapter in a much larger story. Campbell's journey is a reminder that science and spirituality are not opposites. They're two lenses through which we explore the same mystery, and when they converge, when data meets direct experience, something beautiful happens. Truth reveals itself, not as a dogma, not as a belief, but as a living, breathing realization that you are far more than a body, far more than a personality, far more than this brief flicker of life between two dates on a tombstone. You are consciousness, eternal, evolving, participating in a simulation that is not designed to imprison you, but to awaken you. And death? Death is not your enemy. It's not the final boss. It's not even the end. It's the next interface, the next realm, the next opportunity to remember what you are. And once you start to see it that way, something profound begins to happen. You stop running from death, and you start living with intention, because now you know the game doesn't end. It only gets deeper. Imagine everything you've ever known: your body, your thoughts, the chair you're sitting on, the sky above your head, the ground beneath your feet. reduced to one fundamental essence: information. Not molecules, not atoms, not matter, just pure, flowing data. Now imagine that your entire life, every memory, every choice, every fear and triumph, is nothing more than a complex stream of that data, interpreted by your consciousness like code rendered on a screen. That's not just a poetic metaphor. That's the foundation of Thomas Campbell's My Big Toe, a radical scientific model that dares to explain everything. TOE stands for Theory of Everything, and in the world of physics, it's the Holy Grail, an ultimate, unified model that explains both the quantum world of the very small and the relativistic cosmos of the very large. But Campbell's version isn't just about equations or cosmology. It's not confined to blackboards and chalk. His TOE includes you, it includes consciousness, and it includes death, not as an end, but as an elegant switch from one stream of information to another. What Campbell discovered in his explorations and later formulated into his theory is that reality, what we call the physical universe, is not physical at all. It is virtual, rendered, created in real time by a larger system of intelligence in response to the observer, you. Just like a video game only generates what's in your field of view. To conserve processing power, your reality renders itself based on your attention, your choices, your participation. This is not fantasy, it's grounded in logic. Think about quantum physics. Particles don't exist in fixed states until they're observed. Probability collapses into reality through measurement. What you see around you is not a stable objective world. It's a probability field resolved by the act of observation. In Campbell's terms, that act of observation is not a biological function of the brain, it is the action of consciousness, the fundamental force behind all existence. My Big Toe, Campbell posits that consciousness is not an emergent property of physical matter, it is the source of all matter. Consciousness is the base reality. Everything else, the body, the mind, the world, is built on top of that foundation. And once you accept that consciousness is primary, the rest begins to fall into place. Matter, energy, space, time, all of it, are constructs, interfaces within a simulated environment designed to help individuated units of consciousness, like you, interact, learn, and evolve. And here's the key, that simulation runs on information. It's not matter that defines the universe, it's data. Organized, flowing, responsive data. Everything you experience, sight, sound, emotion, memory, is data rendered into subjective experience by your consciousness. Your life, then, is a data stream, not metaphorically but literally, a personalized stream of incoming and outgoing information, processed by your awareness through the interface of a virtual avatar, your body. And just like any simulation, this stream begins when you log in and ends when you log out. That's what we call death. But in this model, death isn't the annihilation of the self. It's not the end of the stream, it's the transition to another stream, another interface, another virtual environment calibrated for the next phase of your consciousness's evolution. When you die, your avatar, your body, ceases to function, but your data stream doesn't disappear. It redirects. It shifts out of the physical reality frame and back into the broader consciousness system that has been running the simulation all along. You don't stop existing, you resume existing in a different format. And just like waking up from a dream, there's a moment of clarity, a moment where the simulation dissolves and you remember this wasn't all there was. You remember your purpose, your path, your growth. You see your choices not through the narrow lens of survival or success, but through the broader lens of evolution. Did you reduce entropy? Did you grow in love, compassion, and awareness? Did you engage the simulation with intention, or did you get lost in the illusion? These are not moral questions, they are evolutionary ones. Because in My Big Toe, the purpose of existence is not obedience, it's growth. The system itself, the larger consciousness system, is evolving, and each individuated unit of consciousness contributes to that evolution through experience, through choice, through its journey across multiple data streams and simulations. That means that this life is not a test, it's a learning module, a sandbox, a customized adaptive environment designed to challenge you in just the right ways to help you grow. Your challenges are not punishments, they are perfectly timed lessons. Your relationships are not coincidences, they are reflections. Your desires and fears, your synchronicities and setbacks, everything are part of the simulation, responding to your consciousness in real time, nudging you toward awareness. And once you begin to see it that way, everything changes. You stop identifying with the avatar. You stop believing that the body is all you are. You begin to understand that your true identity is not your name, your job, or even your thoughts. It is the observer behind them, the field of awareness receiving and interpreting the stream of data that forms your experience. You are not in the simulation is in you, and when that truth hits you, when you feel it not just as a theory but as a lived experience, you become free. Not free from responsibility, but free from fear. Fear of death, fear of failure, fear of meaninglessness. Because now you know there is meaning in everything, because everything is information, and information in this model is love. That may sound strange, how can love be information? But in Campbell's toe, love is not just an emotion. It is a low-entropy state of being, a harmonious alignment between units of consciousness. The more you grow, the more you love. The more you reduce fear, the more efficient your consciousness becomes. The system evolves through the quality of its participants, and the highest quality is love. So when you forgive, you evolve. When you act with kindness, you lower your entropy. When you choose courage over comfort, you expand your data stream into higher orders of awareness. This isn't philosophy, this is mechanics. This is the architecture of the simulation laid bare. And that brings us back to death. In Campbell's model, death is not an end to be feared, it is a natural function of the simulation. Just like a video game ends a level so you can move to the next, the simulation ends this particular avatar's experience when it has served its function. Sometimes the level ends early, sometimes it's long, but always it is precise. You exit the data stream, return to the larger system, review, reflect, and eventually you log in again. You might return to this simulation, or another. You might choose a vastly different interface, a new set of lessons, a new personality, but through it all, your core consciousness remains. Growing, evolving, becoming more ordered, more loving, more aware. And that's the journey you're on right now, even if you didn't realize it. Right now, as you listen to this, your consciousness is interpreting a stream of data. This voice, these words, the feelings they evoke, the questions they awaken, and all of it is part of your learning. Not accidental, not meaningless, but perfectly placed. Because in the simulation there are no coincidences, only code, only patterns, only opportunities to grow. So the question is not, what happens when I die? The question is, what am I doing with the data stream I'm receiving right now? Are you expanding? Are you listening? Are you paying attention to the simulation's feedback? Are you remembering who you truly are beneath the costume? Because once you do, the rules begin to shift. The simulation becomes interactive. The data stream becomes more refined, and death becomes irrelevant. Not because you won't die, but because you can't die. Not really, because what you are was never born. It logged in, and one day when this stream ends, you will log out, not into darkness, but into awareness. And from there you will choose your next stream, not because you have to, but because consciousness never stops evolving, and neither do you. What if the very thing you've been conditioned to wait for, this mysterious shimmering concept of the afterlife, isn't waiting for you at the end of your physical journey? What if it's already here? What if the afterlife isn't something that begins when your heart stops beating, but something you're already inside of, right now as you breathe, as you think, as you watch this moment unfold. This may be the most mind-bending revelation of all, not that there is an afterlife, but that you're already in it. You didn't come from nothing. You logged in. You transitioned from one stream of experience to another, and this life, this physical simulation you call reality, is just the latest room in a vast, infinite mansion of existence. A continuation, not a beginning. A chapter, not a prologue. Think about it. From the moment you were born, you had no memory of where you came from, no recall of what preceded your entry into this body. And yet, deep inside, many of us feel a strange knowing, an intuitive whisper that this isn't our first time around, that we've been here before, or somewhere like it, that somehow parts of us remember things we've never been taught. Those flashes of familiarity with people you've just met. The deja vu that wraps around your spine like a cosmic nudge. The irrational fears or attractions that make no sense in the context of your current life but feel deeply embedded within your being. These aren't random. They're residue, remnants of previous streams of data, previous simulations. You didn't begin here, you resumed here. Reincarnation, once dismissed by science as superstition, is now being taken more seriously by open-minded researchers, especially in the fields of consciousness studies and transpersonal psychology. There are documented cases, especially in young children, where individuals recall vivid, specific details of lives they could never have possibly known. Names, places, languages, events. Verified accounts that point toward a continuity of consciousness that defies material explanation. These aren't just stories, they're clues. Clues that this life is a node in a vast network of experiences, and each time you die, you don't disappear, you transition. You shed one identity, one avatar, and eventually log in again, perhaps into a new role, a new time, a new body. And in that space between death and re-entry, you remember, you reflect, you prepare. But here's the twist that most people miss. The place you enter after death is not more real than this. It's just another frame, another reality stream, and so is this one. That's why Campbell and others who've explored these states emphasize the idea that our current life isn't something before the afterlife. It is an afterlife. It's one of the many realms you can enter as a conscious being. You came from somewhere, you chose this, you logged into this experience knowing the risks, knowing you would forget, knowing that you'd temporarily believe the simulation was all there was, so that the act of remembering would mean something. So if this is the afterlife, then death isn't a door into mystery, it's a door out of this mystery and into the next one. And birth? Birth is just a login screen, a point of entry into a game that's already been going long before you arrive. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Look at the world around you. This life is filled with themes we typically associate with the afterlife. Karma, reflection, growth, transformation, judgment not from some external deity but from within, and ultimately the quest for love, understanding and unity. We're not living in a meaningless rock floating in space. We're participating in a soul-level feedback loop that constantly reflects our state of consciousness back to us. Every interaction is an echo. Every challenge is a calibration. Every heartbreak is a chance to evolve. That's not an accident. That's architecture. That's design. This life feels like a training ground because it is. The afterlife is not a reward or punishment system. It's a continuation of soul evolution. And sometimes that means coming here, logging into a dense, complex, and often painful simulation designed to accelerate growth. Why painful? Because density accelerates learning. Just like pressure forms diamonds, this reality's limitations create the conditions for expansion. When you're stuck in a body dealing with time, space, decay, fear, and separation, you're forced to make choices. You're forced to evolve. You learn what matters. You learn what love truly means, not in theory, but through experience. And that's the entire point. The system doesn't want you to just believe in unity or love or eternity. It wants you to live it, to choose it, to remember it from the inside out. So here you are, already in the afterlife, already in a simulation that's more than physical, already immersed in a system designed to test and refine your consciousness through challenge, beauty, and paradox. You didn't come from nothing. You came from everything. You chose this avatar. You chose this lifetime. You chose this version of Earth with its chaos and wonder, its heartbreak and brilliance. And somewhere, in that deeper layer of awareness that still remembers who you are, you knew what you were doing. You knew you'd forget. But you also knew you would have moments, sacred electric moments, where you would remember, like this one. You see, the idea that we're just now waiting for some divine kingdom to appear, that we have to die before we begin truly living, is a misdirection, a subtle trap. The truth is, you are already walking through eternity, already moving through realms of learning and unlearning, already shaping your soul in the fires of choice and consequence. When people speak of heaven or hell, they're not describing places in the sky, they're describing states of being, conditions of consciousness. You can be in hell now, living in fear, hatred, disconnection, and you can touch heaven now, living in love, surrender, awe, and compassion. The location doesn't change. You do. That's the secret mystics have whispered for thousands of years, that the kingdom is within you, that the veil is thin, that this world and the next are not separated by distance, but by awareness. And when you shift your awareness, when you drop the illusion of being just a body, just a name, just a story, you begin to realize you're already where you were trying to go. The afterlife isn't a destination, it's a perspective. It's a way of seeing this moment as sacred, of treating each person as if they're part of the divine network you came from, of living not in fear of death, but in reverence for life, because you've died before. And you'll die again, not in tragedy, but in transition, not in finality, but in continuity. Every life is a room you walk into, and every death is a door you walk through. The soul keeps moving, the simulation keeps adapting, the journey never ends. So what does that mean for you now? It means you don't have to wait to wake up. You don't have to fear what's coming. You don't have to wonder whether there's more. There is more. There always has been. But the real question isn't whether there's life after death. The question is, can you fully live, knowing this is already the afterlife? Can you forgive, knowing this moment echoes through eternity? Can you love, knowing the simulation is built on connection? Can you release the fear of endings, knowing nothing truly ends? You didn't come from nowhere. You logged in. You brought with you echoes of lifetimes, soul contracts, blueprints and gifts waiting to be remembered. And the sooner you stop waiting for the afterlife to begin, the sooner you realize you're already in it. Now, what will you do with it? You've had those moments, haven't you? The ones where time seems to stutter, where something happens and your whole body whispers, "I've seen this before." A sentence you've never heard, spoken in a place you've never been, and yet something in you remembers it. Deja vu. The brief flicker of a scene you were never supposed to recall. A subtle crack in the illusion, like the simulation glitched for just a second and let you peek behind the curtain. And then there are the synchronicities, the strange, poetic alignments that seem too meaningful to be random. You think of someone and they call you. You open a book to a page that answers a question you've been asking silently. You dream of a symbol and see it the next day carved into stone or printed on a stranger's shirt. These aren't just coincidences. They're cues, breadcrumbs, pings from the system reminding you that none of this is happening by accident. What if your life is being guided more than you think? Not controlled, not dictated, but shaped, coaxed by an intelligence greater than your waking mind. An intelligence that uses the architecture of your experience to send you messages not through words, but through patterns, through meaning, through timing. It's easy to dismiss these moments as anomalies, as quirks of the brain trying to make sense of chaos. But deep down, You know better. You feel it. There's a precision to it, a softness, a familiarity that doesn't come from this world but flows through it like a current beneath the surface. Because if this reality is a simulation, a rendered experience based on information and intent, then every element within it can serve a function. Not just the obvious ones like time and gravity, but the hidden variables too. The nudges, the hints, the subtle loops of experience that push you toward awareness. Deja vu, for instance, may not be a memory error. It may be a moment when your consciousness is briefly syncing up with a future or alternate version of your timeline, a convergence of data streams, a recalibration. You're walking the same corridor of the simulation you've walked before, either in this life, a parallel one, or during a pre-incarnational preview. And for a split second, your awareness catches up to that echo, and you remember, not with the brain, but with the soul. Synchronicities work the same way. They aren't accidents. They're deliberate markers placed along your path, not by an external puppet master, but by the larger intelligence you are a part of, by your own higher consciousness, by the system itself, which exists not to trap you, but to help you evolve. Because that's what this simulation is, an interactive, adaptive learning environment designed for the growth of consciousness. And in any good learning environment, there are signals, feedback mechanisms, moments that let you know when you're aligned, when you're drifting, when it's time to pay attention. Think of synchronicity as the system's way of saying, yes, keep going, or here, this is important, or even, wake up, you're not alone in this. And once you begin to notice them, really notice them, it's as if they multiply. Suddenly, the whole world feels alive with symbols and messages. Numbers repeating, conversations overheard that answer your silent questions, dreams that predict, moments that flow so seamlessly you feel as though you've slipped into a rhythm that was waiting for you all along. These aren't hallucinations. They're code. Not digital code, but conscious code. Patterns embedded in your life to remind you that reality is not as linear, fixed, or accidental as you've been taught to believe. And sometimes, those reminders come in the form of life loops, experiences that repeat, not because you failed, but because the lesson is still active. You date the same type of person again. You lose something just as you're about to find it. You keep running into the same challenge in different forms. It's frustrating, even exhausting, but what if it's not punishment? What if it's curriculum? What if the system is trying to help you crack the code by giving you multiple chances to respond differently? Every loop is an opportunity, a mirror. A question from the simulation: are you ready to see this from a new angle? Because when you do, when you make a new choice, hold a new emotion, extend forgiveness where before there was resentment, that's when the loop breaks. That's when the pattern dissolves. That's when you level up. The system is not testing you like some cruel trickster. It's training you, refining you, honing your awareness through experience, through repetition, through symbols and signs that are only visible when you're willing to look deeper. And here's where it gets even more mysterious. The more you align with your higher consciousness, through meditation, presence, intuition, the more responsive the simulation becomes. The synchronicities become louder. The déjà vu becomes more vivid. The signs become more undeniable. It's as if you've entered a different layer of the game, one where the barriers are thinner, where communication between your avatar self and your eternal self flows more freely. You might begin to see number patterns like 1111 or 222 constantly appearing. You might start waking up at the same time every night. You might feel your attention being drawn to specific books, people, or places you weren't even aware of the day before. These are not random. These are coordinates, updates from the operating system, markers that something is shifting inside you, and reality is responding. It's not that the system suddenly changes, it's that your awareness upgrades. You begin to see the hidden design that was always there, woven into your life like invisible threads connecting seemingly unrelated moments. And the more you trust those threads, the more the tapestry reveals itself. You stop feeling like a victim of chaos and start feeling like a participant in something intelligent, something benevolent, something sacred. Because if reality is data and consciousness is the processor, then what you focus on, what you feel, believe, and expect directly influences the way the simulation unfolds. And when you align with your inner truth, with your evolutionary path, the simulation sends you confirmation. It sends you flow. It sends you synchronicities that say, yes, this is the way. But you have to be listening. You have to be present enough to notice the symbols when they arrive. You have to be open enough to trust the feeling in your gut, the tug on your heart, the vision in your dreams. Because these are the senses of the soul, and they are how the larger system speaks to you, not with thunder or lightning, but with soft, precise nudges. So the next time you feel a flash of déjà vu, pause. Don't dismiss it. Ask yourself, what is this reminding me of? What moment am I syncing up with? What message is hidden inside this feeling of familiarity? And the next time a synchronicity occurs, don't rush past it. Sit with it. Feel it. Acknowledge it as part of the design. Whisper thank you to the unseen intelligence that placed it there, not because you need to worship it, but because you're part of it. You're co-creating this reality, even if you've forgotten. The simulation doesn't want to trap you, it wants to awaken you. And every glitch, every loop, every eerie coincidence that shakes your sense of normalcy is actually a crack in the wall, an invitation to remember that you are not just living in the simulation, you are communicating with it. Every emotion is a transmission, every thought is a code, every choice is a vote for the version of reality you wish to experience. And the signs? The signs are love letters from the universe, reminding you that you are seen, that you are guided, and that this path, however strange or difficult it may feel, is unfolding exactly as it must. So maybe life isn't random at all. Maybe you're not lost, not behind, not broken. Maybe you're exactly where you need to be. Maybe the simulation is working perfectly, and maybe, just maybe, you're starting to see it. There's a moment, just after the final breath, where something indescribable begins to happen, not visible to the eyes of those gathered around the bed, not measurable by any machine, but it's real. Something loosens, something lifts. In that space between one world and the next, consciousness does not vanish. It transitions. Thomas Campbell, through his deep explorations of the non-physical realms, has been witness to what most of us are taught to fear, the soul's passage beyond the physical simulation. And what he observed is not darkness, it's not judgment, it's not chaos. It's something far more intricate and far more beautiful. When the body shuts down, the data stream that defines our experience in this reality ceases, but the consciousness, the true self, doesn't blink out. It is gently, almost delicately moved out of this simulation and into what Campbell and others have described as a kind of transition zone, a realm that resembles what Eastern traditions have long called the bardo, the middle state, a bridge between lives, a space where the soul reorients before moving forward. This transitional realm isn't fixed, like a city or a landscape. It's not the same for every consciousness, but its core characteristics are remarkably consistent. It's stable, peaceful, often quiet. Some experience it as a place of rest, others as a realm of light or presence. Many describe being met by guides, loved ones, or familiar energies, not as a welcome committee but as gentle stewards, helping them remember who they truly are. Campbell noted that during his non-physical explorations he could observe souls passing through this zone. And what struck him wasn't just the consistency, it was the clarity. The transition wasn't chaotic or frightening. It was serene, structured, intelligent, like a handoff between dimensions executed with care. Souls weren't thrown into the void, they were ushered, held, even as their awareness recalibrated to a broader frame of reality. And this wasn't limited to those who had studied consciousness or spirituality in life. Even those who were skeptical, unprepared, or fearful in their physical lifetime found themselves gently supported. The system didn't punish them for ignorance, it simply helped them wake up, first slowly, then fully. Because death, in Campbell's model, isn't an event, it's a process, a shift from one stream of data to another. And the system that governs that shift is not mechanical, it's conscious. It adapts to the needs of the soul. That's why many near-death experiences, regardless of culture, religion, or background, report strikingly similar things. A sense of floating, a sense of calm, a light that feels more like home than anything they've ever known, a presence that radiates love, not judgment, and often a kind of life review. Not forced or shaming, but illuminating, like watching your life not from the ego's lens, but from the soul's. You see how your choices rippled out, how your actions affected others, how your intentions shaped outcomes, and you see it all with a clarity that is impossible in the density of physical form. Campbell experienced this too, not through dying, but through deep conscious exploration of the system beyond the simulation. He reported encountering spaces where souls seemed to be reflecting, decompressing, preparing. Some appeared to be in deep rest, like dreamers between lifetimes. Others were surrounded by helpers, engaging in dialogue or training. These were not fantasies. These were realms with structure, with consistent behaviors, with feedback loops, just like the physical world, but tuned to a different frequency. In some cases, Campbell saw how certain souls resisted the transition, clinging to their identity, confused by the shift, frightened by what they didn't understand. But even in those moments, the system responded with compassion. It did not force awakening, it allowed for adjustment. It created environments suited to the soul's vibration. If a being needed a familiar setting, it was rendered. If it expected a particular religious symbol, that symbol appeared, not as manipulation, but as a bridge, as a way to guide the soul toward truth through the language it could understand. This is echoed in thousands of near-death accounts from all around the world. People from vastly different cultures, speaking of being greeted by ancestors, saints, angels, or pure beings of light. Some see gardens, some see halls. Some experience the sensation of dissolving into everything and yet still existing as self, and despite the symbolic differences, the themes remain. Unconditional love, expansion of awareness, and the overwhelming feeling of returning not to something new, but to something deeply familiar. It's as if the after-death experience isn't about where you go, but what you remember. You remember you're not the name you were given, not the role you played. You remember you've done this before, that this life was one of many, that the simulation wasn't the entirety of your existence. It was just a classroom, a training ground, a temporary dive into limitation, so that your consciousness could expand through the act of remembering itself. Campbell also described how, once souls stabilized in the transition zone, they often entered into what could be described as integration phases. They would process what had happened, not through emotion, but through understanding, like stepping back from a painting you were too close to see. Suddenly the chaos had order, the pain had purpose, even the losses had depth. And with that understanding came healing, not because they were broken, but because they had experienced the illusion of brokenness so they could grow through the journey of restoration. These realms are not stagnant, they are dynamic. Some souls remain for what feels like long periods, although time itself functions differently there. Others choose to return, either to this simulation or to others. Campbell explained that the larger consciousness system is not linear, it's modular. Souls don't reincarnate like players on a timeline. They access experiences from a vast library of simulations, each tailored to different forms of growth. And that growth is never forced. It is offered, chosen, facilitated by a system that is invested in your evolution, not in your obedience. There are no eternal punishments, no damnation, only feedback, only consequence, only learning. When you act from fear, the system reflects fear. When you act from love, it reflects love. It's not judgment, it's mirroring. A perfectly tuned interface between your choices and your experience. This changes everything. It means that the transition we call death is not a black wall. It's a permeable membrane. A veil between layers. A doorway you've passed through many times before, even if you don't remember. And when you pass through it again, you won't be alone. You'll be met. Not by strangers, but by familiar presences. Not by threats, but by love. And perhaps most astonishing of all, you don't have to wait for death to visit these realms. Campbell emphasized that the boundaries between physical and non-physical reality are not fixed. They're flexible. With the right awareness, the right tools, the right frequency of intent, you can begin to explore these states now, through deep meditation, through intentional practice, through quiet listening. You can remember not everything at once, but enough to shift your fear into curiosity, enough to turn your sorrow into meaning, enough to stop seeing death as the enemy and begin seeing it as a continuation, because it is. You are not a physical being waiting for your consciousness to be judged. You are a conscious being who temporarily adopted a physical form, and when that form is done, you will continue, you will transition. You will be welcomed back, and you will remember why you came in the first place. The transition zone is not something to be feared, it's something to be understood, to be honored, to be prepared for, not with rituals or dogma, but with awareness, with presence, with love, because that's the common thread through every account, every experience, every observation. Love is what waits on the other side. Love is the fabric of the transition, and love is what you bring back with you, lifetime after lifetime, until you no longer forget who you are. So if you fear death, don't. It's not the end. It's the remembering, and one day, when you step across that threshold, you will remember the truth. You were never lost. You were only dreaming. And now, it's time to wake up. You've looked in the mirror countless times. You've memorized the contours of your face, the shape of your eyes, the texture of your skin. But none of it is you. Not really. What you see in that reflection is the casing, the avatar, designed for this particular run through the simulation. Useful, yes, vital, even, but temporary. What you are is not contained within the flesh. What you are does not reside in your name, your memories, or even your mind. What you are is consciousness, and consciousness cannot die. The idea that the self is tied to the brain is one of the most persistent illusions of the material world. Science has long told you that your thoughts, your awareness, your very essence are byproducts of neurochemical activity, nothing more than neurons firing in complex patterns, a sophisticated trick of biology. But what if, instead of consciousness arising from the brain is merely receiving it? Like a radio that doesn't create the music but simply tunes into the signal. Damage the radio, and the sound may distort, but the signal, the music itself, is untouched, still broadcasting, still alive. Modern physics gives us a foundation for this understanding. The law of conservation of energy states clearly energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change form. And what is consciousness, if not a form of energy? A frequency, a field, a presence that flows through matter but is not bound by it. If your body were to cease functioning, if the machinery stopped running, that field would not vanish. It would shift, it would transition, it would continue just as it always has. This isn't just theory. It is echoed by sages and mystics across time. The Buddha taught that the self is not the body, not the mind, not even the thoughts that pass through awareness, but the awareness itself. Eckhart Tolle reminds us that you are the awareness behind your thoughts. Rumi wrote, "You were born with wings. Why prefer to crawl through life?" These are not poetic metaphors. They are precise reminders. You are not what dies. You are what witnesses life, and what will continue witnessing after the body has been laid down. In truth, the idea that death ends anything meaningful is a misunderstanding of what life truly is. Death ends the avatar, not the player. It closes a window, not the light that shines through it. And yet, most people spend their lives terrified of that closing window, clinging to it as if it's the source of their being. But if you can shift your identity from the window to the light, everything changes. You begin to see that your consciousness is not located inside your body. It's not a product of your biology. It's the animating force of everything you are. When someone you love passes, what you miss isn't their body. It's their presence, their field, that signature frequency of awareness that you felt in their eyes, in their laughter, in the silence between words. And if you've ever felt them near you after they were gone, if you've heard their voice in a dream or caught the scent of them when no one else was around, that's because their consciousness never died, it only shifted form. This is why near-death experiences so often describe feeling more alive after their death than during their life, why they report floating above their bodies with perfect clarity, hearing conversations in distant rooms, recalling every detail with impossible precision. Their consciousness wasn't dimming, it was expanding. Free from the filters of the physical brain, awareness bloomed. Because the brain, as advanced as it may be, is still a limiter. It focuses and filters experience for the sake of the simulation. But once that filter is removed, the full spectrum returns. You are not your brain. You are not the thoughts that flicker across its surface. You are the space in which those thoughts arise. You are the observer, the experiencer, the one who remembers not just facts but meaning, the one who dreams not only in sleep but in waking life. And that you does not cease when the avatar shuts down. It opens, it returns, it moves forward. In quantum physics, we're taught that particles exist in multiple potential states until observed, that reality itself is shaped by consciousness. If that's true, then your awareness is not merely watching the show, it's part of the fabric of what makes the show possible. You are not a side effect, you are a force. And forces, like energy, do not vanish, they adapt. They reconfigure, they persist. The Tibetan Book of the Dead teaches that after death, the soul moves through stages of awareness, mirror-like reflections of its own unresolved lessons and deepest truths. The Egyptian Book of the Dead speaks of weighing the heart against a feather, not as punishment, but as a measure of the soul's resonance with truth and lightness. These texts, though ancient, align beautifully with what Campbell and many others have discovered through direct exploration, that consciousness is the only constant, the only real thread. Everything else, the body, the memories, the identities, is temporary packaging. But here's the real key. Knowing that your consciousness never dies is not an invitation to escape life. It's an invitation to engage it fully. Because if what you are is eternal, then the real question becomes, what are you doing with this experience? This brief, flickering window into form and limitation, this opportunity to grow, to feel, to learn through contrast, to be afraid and then brave, to be confused and then clear, to be separate and then remember unity. You didn't come here to hide from death. You came here to remember that you never die, and from that remembrance, to live differently, to love more freely, to forgive faster, to hold pain with compassion instead of resistance, to treat every interaction as sacred, not because it might be your last, but because it already is your next. Because when you realize you're not here instead of the afterlife, but as part of a larger, ongoing stream of consciousness, you start to walk differently. You stop fearing endings and start focusing on alignment, on awareness, on the quality of your attention, your presence, your choices, because those are the real metrics, not how long you live, but how fully you engage with the sacred opportunity of being alive. And yes, this truth is both humbling and liberating. Humbling because it means the little self Your ego, your roles, your temporary triumphs are not what last. Liberating because it means you're not bound by them. You're free to change, free to evolve, free to shed old skins without fear of losing your essence, because your essence has never been at risk. It has never diminished. It has only waited for you to remember. So, if you are energy, and energy cannot be destroyed, then you are eternal, not someday, not after death, now. Eternity is not a destination, it's your natural state, masked by the veil of temporary experience. And that veil is not a prison. It's a classroom, a theater, a game board, a crucible where your consciousness learns how to hold more light. And yet, so many live as if they're racing toward oblivion, frantic to prove something, to gain something, to avoid the inevitable. But when you remove the illusion of death, that frantic noise begins to quiet. In its place, something deeper arises. Purpose. Not the kind you measure in awards or possessions, but the kind you feel when your inner being is aligned with the greater whole. So ask yourself, not as a body or a role or a mind, but as consciousness itself. What am I doing with this incarnation? Not what am I achieving, but what am I becoming? What frequency am I cultivating? What legacy of energy am I weaving into the simulation? Because that's what echoes beyond the transition. Not your job title, not your bank balance, but your vibration, your choices, your love, your presence. And when this round is over, when the avatar sleeps and the simulation fades, you'll find yourself still here, still aware, still growing, because consciousness never dies, it remembers, and now, so do you. If you're not your body, not your thoughts, not even your memories, then what are you doing here? Why this simulation? Why this particular path filled with both pain and wonder, with setbacks and moments of pure bliss? Why come into a world that seems, at times, so chaotic, so unforgiving, so beautifully imperfect? The answer lies not in punishment or randomness, but in evolution. Not the evolution of species, but the evolution of your consciousness. You are here, in this simulation, not to prove your worth, but to refine your being, to upgrade, to expand, to learn how to operate at higher levels of awareness, intention, and love. Thomas Campbell explains this with clarity rooted in both science and direct experience. According to his theory, consciousness is the fundamental substance of reality. Everything else, matter, time, space, is built upon it. And consciousness has a goal: to evolve, to grow toward lower entropy. That word entropy is often used in physics to describe disorder, randomness, and decay. In consciousness, it represents fragmentation, fear, separation. Reducing entropy means becoming more ordered, more integrated, more aware, more aligned with love. The more your consciousness evolves, the less entropy it carries, and the more it contributes to the growth of the entire system. That is the purpose of the simulation, to help you reduce your entropy, not through lectures or divine commands, but through experience, through choice, through immersion in a reality so convincing, so detailed, that you begin to forget where you came from, just enough to make your journey here real. You were not dropped into this life to be tested by some external judge. You entered it willingly, knowing that by facing limitation, confusion, and separation, you could discover clarity, wholeness, and unity from the inside out. And the way this system helps you evolve is not by rewarding belief, but by creating conditions that allow growth. Think about the moments that have shaped you most. Were they easy? Were they smooth? Or were they the moments when you broke open? When loss cracked you, when pain humbled you, when disappointment forced you to look inward and ask deeper questions? These aren't detours. They're features. They're built into the simulation as accelerators of awareness, not to make you suffer, but to make you see. Joy teaches you what's possible. Pain teaches you where you're blocked. Love shows you what you are. Loss reminds you what you're not. And together these experiences guide your consciousness toward evolution, toward becoming more intentional, more compassionate, more refined in your ability to perceive and respond. Every challenge is feedback. Every moment is a chance to choose higher. You are not here to coast, you're here to engage, to become more conscious within the game. The system responds to your choices not with arbitrary punishment or reward, but with adaptive feedback that reflects the quality of your consciousness in real time. If you act from fear, the simulation presents fear-based results. If you act from love, you experience coherence, connection, and flow. This isn't magic, it's mechanics. The simulation is designed to help you see yourself. And the most powerful mirror it uses? Relationships. The people in your life are not accidents. They are reflections, agreements, catalysts. Some will awaken your deepest joys, others will trigger your greatest wounds. Both are teachers. Both are part of the curriculum. You may resist them, you may misunderstand them, but if you pay attention, if you lean in with curiosity, you'll begin to see the larger design. Every heartbreak has a purpose. Every betrayal contains a lesson. Every reunion holds a memory that reaches beyond this lifetime. You are not evolving in isolation. Consciousness evolves through interaction, through contrast, through the dance of selves learning to see the divine in one another. You might think you came here to accomplish goals, to fulfill desires, to accumulate experiences. But underneath all of that, what you're really doing is refining your being, becoming a more capable, more loving, more coherent vessel of awareness. This is why the simulation includes difficulty. If everything were easy, nothing would change. You'd stagnate. You'd remain in the entropy of comfort. But growth requires friction, pressure, tension, not as punishment, but as potential. Just like muscles grow stronger under resistance, your consciousness expands when faced with the necessity of choosing growth over fear. And that choice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's found in the smallest moments, the decision to be kind instead of reactive, to listen instead of judge, to remain present when escape feels easier. Campbell explains that this feedback loop is perfectly tailored to each individual. The simulation adapts to you. It challenges you at the edges of your current awareness, constantly offering opportunities to transcend your old patterns. And when you do, when you respond with more love, more clarity, more presence, you don't just evolve personally. You contribute to the evolution of the entire system. Your upgrade ripples outward. It affects the collective. Because in this simulation, no action exists in isolation. You are not a passive participant. You are a co-creator. And your growth matters not just for you, but for the entire field of consciousness. That's why your journey is sacred. That's why your healing matters. Because the system itself evolves through you. Through every moment you wake up a little more. Through every layer of fear you dissolve. Through every gesture of compassion you offer. Especially when it's hard. So the pain you carry, the confusion, the unanswered questions, they are not signs of failure. They are the very materials of transformation. They are the texture of the game, the puzzle pieces that, when assembled, reveal a picture far more profound than you ever imagined. This life is not a test you can fail. It's a playground of consciousness designed to help you discover what's possible when you choose to remember who you are, even in the midst of forgetfulness. You came here not to be perfect, but to be present. Not to escape pain, but to learn from it. Not to bypass the messiness of human experience, but to engage with it so fully that it transforms you from the inside out. And through that process, through that sacred work of feeling, growing, and choosing again, you reduce your entropy. You become more whole, more coherent, more aligned, and eventually, when this round ends, you'll carry that evolution with you. Into the next simulation, the next experience, the next expression of consciousness, because it never stops. You never stop. You're not here by accident. You're not a glitch. You're not lost. You're playing a game so intricate, so beautiful, that the moment you truly understand it, you fall to your knees in gratitude. And when you stand again, it will be with a deeper knowing that everything, every joy, every sorrow, every twist and turn was always guiding you home to the center of your being, to that quiet place where you realize you were never being punished, you are being shaped. What you are is eternal. But what you're doing, that's the point. So choose wisely. And know that every step you take toward awareness, every moment you choose love over fear, you're not just winning a game. You're becoming the kind of consciousness that no longer needs the game. But for now, you're here. And that means you still have something to learn, or maybe, just maybe, something to remember. Most people wait for death to give them the answers. They think that only once the final breath has been taken, only once the veil lifts, will they understand what this life was all about. But what if you didn't have to wait? What if you could begin to explore the hidden architecture of reality now, while you're still breathing, still walking this earth, still inside the simulation? You don't need to die to reach the afterlife. You just need to wake up. Because the boundaries between this world and the next are not solid walls. They're more like membranes, soft, flexible, responsive to your state of consciousness. The truth is, this simulation isn't locked from the inside. You've just forgotten where the door is. But the good news is that door has always been within you. The key has always been your awareness. Waking up inside the simulation doesn't mean escaping your life. It doesn't mean retreating to a cave or rejecting the physical world. Quite the opposite. It means tuning into the deeper frequencies within your life, the hidden signals that were always there, guiding you, nudging you, waiting to be noticed. And once you begin tuning in, the simulation starts to shift, subtly at first, then dramatically, like turning a blurry picture into high definition. Meditation is one of the most powerful ways to begin that process, not as a trendy habit, but as a sacred practice of stripping away illusion. When you sit in stillness, you start to separate the noise from the signal. You begin to see how many of your thoughts aren't truly yours, how many of your fears are inherited scripts running on autopilot. And as you watch them without judgment, they lose their grip. The simulation's hold begins to soften. In that space, you become the observer, not the story, not the identity, but the consciousness watching it all unfold. And in that witnessing, something profound happens. You remember. You remember that what's behind your eyes is older than this body, that the silence beneath your thoughts is not empty. It's full of presence, full of potential, full of the same awareness that exists in the realms beyond death, because you're already connected to those realms. You always have been. The only thing that separates you is attention. And the more you train your attention, through breath, through stillness, through intention, the more porous the simulation becomes. The more you start to notice things you used to ignore, subtle shifts in vibration, patterns in your emotional energy, symbols that repeat in your dreams and your waking life. The invisible begins to speak. Lucid dreaming is another gateway. When you become conscious inside a dream, you're doing more than having fun. You're remembering how malleable reality truly is. In a lucid dream, intention shapes experience instantly. You think of flying and you soar. You desire a doorway and one appears. These aren't hallucinations. They're demonstrations. They're previews of what consciousness can do when it's not constrained by dense physical filters. When you begin practicing lucid dreaming regularly, through reality checks, dream journaling, and affirmations, you're not just accessing another world. You're training yourself to wake up in this one. Because the same skills that allow you to become lucid in a dream, awareness, questioning reality, noticing anomalies, are the same skills that bring lucidity to your waking life. And once you start applying those skills here, this world begins to reveal its true nature. Patterns emerge. Meaning intensifies. You realize that this waking life is also a dream, just one with more persistent rules. But those rules are not absolute. They bend in the presence of vibration. Everything in this simulation is frequency. Your emotions, your thoughts, your intentions, all of them are vibrational signatures, and the simulation responds to those signatures like code responds to a command. Raise your vibration, and your experience shifts. Lower it, and your reality becomes denser, heavier, more distorted. That's why vibrational awareness is so crucial. It's not about pretending to be happy all the time, it's about becoming aware of what you're emitting. When you're anxious, fearful, or angry, the simulation reflects that state back to you, not as punishment, but as feedback. And when you're centered, loving, and aligned, the simulation opens up. Synchronicities increase, flow returns, guidance becomes clearer. One of the most effective ways to shift your vibration is through the body, specifically through breath work. Your breath is the bridge between your conscious and unconscious mind. It's the only system in the body that runs automatically, but can also be consciously controlled. That makes it a portal. Through rhythmic breathing, such as box breathing, alternate nostril, or circular connected breath, you can quiet the analytical mind, activate your parasympathetic nervous system, and induce altered states of awareness. These states allow you to access the deeper levels of the simulation, levels that most people only touch in dreams or near-death experiences. Pair this with binaural beats, audio frequencies designed to synchronize brain hemispheres, and the effects multiply. Binaural audio can guide your brain into theta and delta states associated with deep meditation, intuition, and non-local consciousness. Tools like HemiSync, developed by the Monroe Institute, have been used to induce out-of-body experiences, enhance remote viewing, and facilitate communication with non-physical entities. This isn't science fiction, it's frontier neuroscience, and it gives you the ability to explore other layers of the simulation without ever leaving your room. But perhaps the most profound hack of all is intent-based manifestation. Because the simulation isn't just passively observed, it's interactively designed. Your focused intention, when combined with elevated emotion and belief, becomes a command line. The field responds not just to what you say, but to what you feel as true. That's why most people don't manifest what they want, they manifest what they believe. If your subconscious is saturated with lack, fear, or unworthiness, that's the signal you send, and the simulation reflects it perfectly. But when you begin to clean the inner lens through healing, through awareness, through vibrational practice, you change the signal. You start to send out frequencies of wholeness, clarity, gratitude, love, and the field responds in kind. People show up, opportunities align, circumstances rearrange. It's not magic, it's mechanics. The simulation is built to be responsive. So don't wait for permission, don't wait for death, don't wait for someone to save you. You are already equipped, already encoded with the tools to wake up inside this dream. Meditation opens the mind. Lucid dreaming opens the imagination. Breathwork opens the body. Intention opens the field. And love is the master key. When you live in alignment with love, not as sentiment but as a state of being, you begin to notice something extraordinary. The simulation starts to cooperate, not because you're forcing it, but because you're no longer resisting it. You're flowing with its design, not fighting against it. You're co-creating with the larger intelligence that birthed you into this experience. And yes, the challenges will still come, but you'll see them differently. You'll stop interpreting struggle as failure and start seeing it as refinement. You'll begin to recognize the signs, those subtle winks from the universe that show you you're on track. And most of all, you'll stop waiting. Waiting to be worthy. Waiting to be ready. Waiting for death to show you the truth. Because the truth has always been here. You're in the afterlife, right now. This is the great beyond, disguised as traffic jams, heartbreaks, quiet mornings, and miraculous synchronicities. You don't need to escape to find the divine. You need to notice it. You need to tune into it. You need to wake up to the fact that every breath, every moment, every choice is taking place in a realm more magical, more intelligent, more responsive than you've ever imagined. The veil is not out there, it's inside you, and when you pierce it, even for a moment, the simulation responds. You start to see, you start to feel, and then you remember. It's easy to look around at this world. the suffering, the confusion, the chaos, and feel like something has gone horribly wrong, like you've been dropped into a trap, locked into a system designed to hold you back, hurt you, break you down. And if you've ever thought that, you're not alone. Almost everyone at some point on their journey reaches that threshold of despair. That aching question, why am I here? What if I told you the answer is not punishment, not randomness, and not karmic debt? What if I told you you're not here to escape, but to evolve? This simulation isn't a prison, it's a classroom, and not the kind with boring lectures and arbitrary grades, but the kind designed by consciousness itself to help you become more conscious. You didn't get stuck in this reality stream. You chose it, with full awareness of what it would entail, with understanding that it would be hard, confusing, sometimes even excruciating. But you also saw the value in it. You saw what this specific stream, this precise set of variables, relationships, and events could offer for your growth. You looked at this life and said, that's the one. That's where I'll evolve next. And so you arrived, not as punishment but as participation, not as a prisoner but as a willing player in the most immersive learning environment consciousness has ever created. You weren't sent here to suffer. You were sent here to see, to feel, to choose, because that's how evolution works. Not through force, but through feedback. Not through compliance, but through conscious participation. You were never meant to escape the game. You were meant to wake up inside it, to realize that every hardship you face isn't a glitch, it's curriculum. Every challenge is a lesson tailored to the exact level of your awareness, not because the system is testing you, but because it knows what you're capable of. It sees what you're ready for, even when you don't. So when something breaks in your life, when a relationship dissolves, when a dream crumbles, when a plan unravels, it's not a sign that you're failing. It's a sign that something deeper is being called forth. A part of you that hasn't fully emerged yet. A strength you didn't know you had. A clarity you couldn't access until life forced you to look. Think about the hardest moments in your life, the losses, the betrayals, the heartbreaks. And now ask yourself this: who did I become because of them? Not what did you lose, but what did you gain? What new depth did you reach? What new perspective did you unlock? What kind of love, compassion, or resilience was born from that fire? That's not to romanticize pain. It hurts, sometimes unbearably. But in a simulation built to evolve consciousness, pain is often the portal. It strips away illusion. It dissolves ego. It humbles and sharpens and softens all at once. It asks you to decide, will I close down or will I open up? Will I collapse or will I rise? And the system doesn't punish you for closing, it simply presents the pattern again. It says, here, look again, try again. There's something in this for you. Because the game isn't linear, it's cyclical, it loops, not to trap you, but to give you multiple chances to choose differently. Every time you repeat a painful pattern, the system isn't mocking you, it's inviting you. Inviting you to notice, to shift, respond from a higher frequency. That's how you know this simulation is conscious, because it responds to you. When you change, it changes. When you evolve, the game upgrades. You stop seeing the same people, the same scenarios. You start drawing in new mirrors, people who reflect your higher vibration, opportunities that match your expanded awareness. But if you approach the simulation as a prison, you miss all of this. You get stuck in resistance. You start asking, how do I get out of here? Instead of, what am I here to learn? And that one question, what am I here to learn, can transform every situation you're in, every argument, every heartbreak, every setback, because it reframes the moment. It reminds you that you are not being punished, you are being shaped. Even your limitations are teachers, your fears, your doubts, your wounds. They are not signs of failure. They are the raw material of your evolution, because when you face them, not avoid, not suppress, but truly face them, they begin to transform. And as they transform, so do you. Thomas Campbell explained that the simulation isn't here to keep you asleep. It's designed to give you every opportunity to wake up. But waking up doesn't mean floating off into bliss and leaving the world behind. It means being more in the world, more present, more aware, more loving. Because the more awake you are, the more you understand your role, not as a victim, but as a conscious participant in a system that is always offering you a mirror. And the clearer your mirror becomes, the more you start to notice that even the most difficult people in your life are playing a role. The ones who trigger you, the ones who abandon you, the ones who reflect your shadows. They're not here to torment you. They're here to show you the places within that still need light. And once you've learned what they came to teach, the energy shifts. The dynamic changes. Sometimes they disappear, sometimes they transform. But either way, your growth determines the outcome. That's why you chose this simulation, with its pain and its beauty, its highs and its lows. You chose it not because it was easy, but because it offered the precise challenges your consciousness was ready to face. That means you're not lost, you're not behind, you're not broken, you're on track, even if it doesn't look like it, especially if it doesn't look like it. The system is designed to stretch you, to confront you with the parts of yourself that you've forgotten, denied, or abandoned, not to punish you, but to bring you home. Home to your power, home to your purpose, home to the awareness that you are not here by accident. You are here by choice. And that means you can choose differently. You can shift the game from the inside. You can align with your higher self and begin to receive different feedback. Because this simulation is feedback. That's all it is. A beautifully responsive, brilliantly designed reflection of your current state of consciousness. It's not here to destroy you, it's here to evolve you. So if life feels heavy, if it feels unfair, if it feels too much, pause, breathe, ask, what is this teaching me? Where am I being invited to grow? What pattern is repeating, and what new choice is being asked of me? The answers won't always come instantly, but the asking itself changes your vibration. It tells the system, I'm listening, I'm ready, show me, and the system will respond. Always, because it wants you to succeed, it wants you to wake up, it wants you to evolve, not just for your sake, but for the sake of the whole, because your growth contributes to the larger field. Every step you take toward consciousness makes the system more intelligent, more loving, more coherent. So don't run from the game. Don't curse it. Don't numb yourself just to get through it. Engage with it, ask it questions, listen to its feedback. Move through it with curiosity, with humility, with courage. You'll start to see that it's not against you. It never was. It was always waiting for you to remember who you are and why you came. You're not here by accident, you're not stuck. You're in the perfect reality stream for your evolution, and now it's time to play it consciously. There comes a moment in every life, whether whispered in a hospital room, spoken beneath breath in the solitude of grief, or felt as a silent question pulsing behind our eyes, when we must face the inevitable, death. That shadowed edge of human experience that waits for us all, regardless of race, belief, status, or story. It's the one certainty we spend lifetimes trying to ignore, resist, or prepare for. But what if we've misunderstood it entirely? What if death isn't the final door shutting behind us, but a doorway swinging open into something far more vast, far more vivid, far more real than anything we've ever known? What if, when the avatar dies, the explorer wakes up? You've journeyed through this life as a particular character in a particular story. You've worn the clothes of identity, learned the rules of this world, suffered its pains, savored its joys. But behind all of it, behind the roles, the reactions, the dreams, has been you, the observer, the consciousness witnessing the simulation from within. And that consciousness is not tied to your heartbeat. It's not suspended in your brain tissue. It doesn't flicker out when your body takes its last breath. It continues, it expands, it remembers. You see, death is not a full stop. It's a soft return, a homecoming. It's the moment when the character dissolves and the deeper awareness that animated them rises to the surface. It's not about disappearing. It's about disembedding. About stepping out of one layer of reality and into the next. Like a dreamer awakening from a dream, not because the dream was false, but because it served its purpose, and now the dreamer sees more clearly. Consciousness survives death because it was never inside death to begin with. It flows through life and beyond it, like a current beneath the waves. When your physical body ceases, the current doesn't stop. It simply moves into another stream, another version of reality, another layer of the infinite game you've always been playing. Not randomly, but intelligently, lovingly, purposefully. Because this journey isn't about survival, it's about evolution. Your soul doesn't cling to form out of fear. It chooses form for the chance to grow, to experience itself in new ways, to refine its vibration through the incredible challenge of being limited, of forgetting, of rediscovering truth within illusion. This life was one such journey, a temporary immersion, a sacred dive into density for the purpose of emerging with more light. And when the avatar, your body, your identity, your story, has served its time, when it's worn thin and begins to loosen its grip, something remarkable begins to happen. There's a shift, a peeling back of layers, a gentle unraveling of the simulation. You begin to lift, to rise, not upward into a heaven built of clouds, but inward, into depth, into memory, into recognition. What felt like death becomes birth. Not the end of your existence, but the beginning of your expansion, because death is just the beginning. Again. Born again, because you've done this before. Many times. In different forms. With different names. You've worn the costume of countless lives. Countless avatars. Each one offering new lessons, new growth, new mirrors for your evolution. You may not remember them now, but deep within you is the imprint of every journey, every soul you've touched, every light you've kindled. They are not lost. They are part of you. And when you pass through that next veil, you'll feel them again. You'll remember. And yet, there's no rush to get there. Because this life matters. This now matters. Not because it's final, but because it's formative. What you do here echoes beyond here. The love you give, the truth you speak, the healing you embody, all of it ripples outward, into this life, into others, into the wider field of consciousness you're always connected to. This is why escaping is never the goal. This simulation wasn't built to trap you, it was built to elevate you. It's the fire that tempers your spirit, the mirror that reflects your evolution, the arena in which you get to choose how much light you bring into every moment. And when your time in this simulation ends, you won't be judged. You won't be discarded. You'll be welcomed, because what you are is eternal, and the system knows it. Thomas Campbell said it best, the larger consciousness system is not here to punish, but to evolve. It's a dynamic, intelligent network, one that adapts, responds, and supports your growth in ways you can't always see from within the simulation. But once you step out, once you transition, you'll understand. You'll see the brilliance of every twist and turn, the sacredness of every encounter. It was all for something. It was all part of the curriculum you designed to accelerate your awakening. And when you wake up on the other side, when the noise of this world fades into silence, you'll feel something you may have forgotten for a long time. Peace. A peace so deep, so complete, that it doesn't erase the pain you lived through. It justifies it. It reveals the purpose behind it, not with words, but with knowing. A recognition that the story of your life was never meaningless. It was medicine for you, for others, for the system itself. You may find yourself in a space between worlds, a realm of light, of presence, of gentle review. Not a courtroom, but a sanctuary. You'll see your life through new eyes. You'll feel how your choices impacted others. not with guilt, but with clarity, not with shame, but with understanding. You'll recognize the love you gave, the moments you fell short, the beauty you created just by showing up. And then you'll choose. You'll choose whether to rest, to return, or to move on to new forms, new realities, new expressions of consciousness. Because evolution doesn't stop at death. It continues. Always. You are not a static being with one shot at getting it right. You are an infinite expression of Source, unfolding across time and space, like a cosmic fractal, exploring every nuance of being. So let go of the fear. Let go of the finality. Let go of the belief that your worth hinges on perfection. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to remember, to bring awareness into every corner of your experience, to become more present, more loving, more aligned with the essence of who you've always been. And when this chapter closes, when the avatar returns to the dust from which it came, you will not vanish. You will awaken, you will laugh. You may even cry tears of joy, because the weight will lift, the veil will part, and you'll feel the fullness of your being, unobstructed by fear, unburdened by identity. The journey goes on, always. And this isn't wishful thinking. It's not fantasy. It's the testimony of mystics, sages, scientists, and explorers who have peered beyond the veil and returned with the same message. Death is not the end. It is a passage, a transition, a continuation. You were never meant to fear it. You were meant to walk through it, with awareness, with grace, with the knowing that who you are cannot be ended or expanded. So live. While you're here, live fully, love deeply, feel everything, not because this is your only life, but because this life is yours and it matters. Because what you do with it becomes part of the consciousness you carry forward. It becomes part of the echo that shapes the next chapter of your infinite becoming. One day, you will close your eyes for the last time in this world. And when you open them again, you'll remember, you were never the avatar, you were always the explorer. And the journey is just beginning.